Welcome back to the Valor Flight Crew podcast, hosted by Echo and brought to you by Vertical Helicasts and Valor Plus. When does confidence become complacency? And what happens when the passion that brought you into this industry starts to fade?
Most days, I hit the snooze button, I roll over and want to get more sleep like anyone else. But that's actually where you start recognizing complacency setting in. And, that action, your action is what creates that motivation. I believe it's that kind of discipline that comes in that creates a motivation, and think of motivation as a decision like anything else. The biggest thing I would say is taking action first. Action creates that momentum. Momentum builds your confidence. Confidence builds your belief, and belief changes you as a person, and you become a changed person.
Today, we sit down with flight paramedic Mark Fowler to talk motivation, discipline, purpose, and why staying at your best isn't about waiting to feel inspired. It's about choosing to keep moving forward. So strap in. It's time to get uncomfortable with being comfortable. Thank you to our sponsors, Global Medical Response Air, Metro Aviation, and Spectrum Aeromed.
Welcome to the Valor Flight Crew podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicast, produced in partnership with Echo, Every Coast Helicopter Operations. The Valor Flight Crew podcast promotes the personnel and life-saving equipment behind helicopter air ambulance services. Join hosts Mike Fadale and Blake Shrider for in-depth interviews and expert insights from air medical personnel, pilots, communication specialists, and maintenance crews who play critical roles in airborne emergency response.
Line 1 accepting.
Copy, line 1, gotcha, accepting. You're going to be talking to Red Feather 1 on LC EMS.
Welcome back to the Valor Flight Crew podcast. As always, your host, Mike Fadale and Blake Shrider. How are you today, Blake?
I'm doing great, Mike. How are you?
I'm hanging in there. I'm ready to go away for a weekend and enjoy some time up at the cabin. I'll be spending the next foreseeable 3 to 4 days on the boat with a drink in my hand, so I will be a happy camper.
Absolutely, literally. That's awesome,
Literally
man.
and figuratively.
Good for you. Well deserved. Well deserved.
Yes, it was much needed. But before we get to that, we do have a pretty amazing podcast for you today. Really looking forward to this discussion. And I think the reason I'm looking forward to it is Blake, you and I have been in this industry for a hot second now at this point, right? We've seen a lot of changes in the industry. We've gone through a lot of changes in ourselves in this industry. And I think as in general, I think when we get into HEMS and public safety aviation, we're very driven individuals. We have practiced our craft at nauseum just to be able to have the skills necessary to do the job, get the work done, and have that team atmosphere to do it. But I think as we've been in this a little bit of time now, it's easy to fall into that place of complacency and maybe lose some of that motivation and not necessarily have the get up and go, or should I say our get up and go got up and left. And there's times where I feel like we all fall into this kind of bucket where we don't necessarily have all of that. And so I really am looking forward to having this discussion today with our guests to be able to really kind of delve into what some of that looks like and how hopefully we as public safety aviation professionals can hopefully somewhat prevent some of those things and recognize them and prevent them. So really looking forward to the discussion. So without further ado, I'd love to welcome to the episode Mark Fowler. How are you today, Mark?
Hey, you guys. I'm doing good. How are y'all?
Can't complain here. Like I said, I'm got a great weekend ahead, and I'm off work after like 9 or 10 day stretch. It's nothing big, so I'm a happy camper.
Talk about keeping it going. You work 10 days in a row and trying to find that motivation. And I think at least Mike and Mark to lead this conversation off. I think you've already started half of that process, right? Like that work-life balance. So you work hard. You've got a nice little short getaway, which I think is very much needed. But I think that's a big part of how we can stay refreshed and still coming back to work ready to go, but not burning ourselves out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so important to make sure that we have that extra time. And that's a big part, I think, of what we're going to end up talking about today. Mark, before we get into it, if you don't mind, if you can just tell us a little bit about yourself, your flight experience and your background and who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to thank you guys again for having me on. A little background on myself. I've been in EMS for about 11 years now, and flight paramedicine for about 5. I teach at medic nurses schools. I help organize and facilitate a scholarship. I help and work at local EMS agencies and the community. And whenever I'm not doing my other 10 jobs, I run a social media platform aimed at motivated people. And they also provide some comedic relief with that social media handle being Mark Fowler 1234 also.
Yeah, I think before you, so Mark, you had reached out and asked about potentially coming and joining us on the podcast, and that was the first thought that came to my mind was looking at seeing some of your videos online through whether it be Instagram or Facebook, and seeing the motivational stuff that you like to do, or how you try to keep people engaged. And that's really what kind of spoke to me and where the idea came for this podcast, because I feel we all get to the point in our career sometimes where work feels like work. And I think at the end of the day, if you go back to it, like this job is the best job in the world. And I feel so incredibly fortunate to be part of this industry and to have this job. And it's great to see people who have that same passion and drive and want to motivate others. And I think that's really where the basis for a lot of this ended up coming from.
I could agree with you more. It's hard to find people, especially the longer you stay in the career, you kind of lose that drive. And I hope to bring that drive back in most people and or create it for our industry.
Excellent. I say let's start off a little bit of an icebreaker here. And obviously, you're a very passionate person and very motivated person. Can you tell us about something that in the industry that you are extremely passionate about? And what is it about that topic that keeps you motivated to really learn and do and be the best that you can in the HEMS world?
Yeah, I would say my biggest passion now is motivating people and helping them to become the best versions of themselves and really better than they were yesterday. And essentially, that growth is what my passion is kind of more focused on now. People usually expect me to say the helicopters or the critical care medicine part, but helping people become more confident. And that can be either through teaching, mentoring, or just helping the average person realize they're capable of more is kind of the passion that really drives me now and helping create that
Love that.
growth for everyone.
So, Mark, when you talk about growth, and I think that's an awesome point that we all start this field with that we're going to help. We're going to do something, and it's going to be great, and it's going to be heroic, and it's going to do all these amazing things. And I know how I felt when I first started. I mean, I was scared. I had not a whole lot of life experience. I was 23, so I'm obviously dating myself, but to just kind of hold on to and keep that passion and those feelings from when you first start this job. Can you kind of take us back to when you first started in EMS and then how that transitioned into you focusing on getting into flight and kind of that process and that journey on what it took for you to get there?
Looking back, I would have to kind of start in a HOSA class I took back in high school. It was a healthcare class. During that class, that's whenever it really spiked my interest because one of the days we had a flight crew come in to do a presentation, and I was amazed at their presentation, especially how they presented themselves. They got to share some cool stories that we all loved. But as we kept talking to them, a, a group of our local EMS had came in too, and I realized with their presentation is they were really the experts on scene. So that kind of really drove me to kind of get into that career originally. And from there, I started researching it, talking to everyone I could, going to a guidance counselor. And, at that point, I knew I needed to start with just being an EMT. That's what I got out of high school. And then whenever I graduated, I was hired shortly thereafter with it. So that's how my EMS career kind of started.
I think it's amazing, like, to see now. Like, I mean, I remember when I was in high school and some of it was maybe just starting to up. Things were just starting to kind of come out, getting into the healthcare field. But I think now I've just amazed on how much more exposure into the healthcare industry younger folks are getting, especially in high school. And then it's opening up. so many doors and opportunities for people to start even doing curriculum and things from a very young age, like 16 and on. And I'm blown away by that. I mean, I didn't even know what the heck I wanted to do when I finished high school. I think I was just happy to graduate high school and move forward. But I am just amazed on the exposure that we all have. And I know I take it for granted a lot when we go to places and we do outreach and we do PRs. I know sometimes, I know I'm not the only one, but I know sometimes you're like, oh, all right, it's going to be hot. We're going to go out there. And I really sometimes forget like that impact that we truly make. And Mark, I'm so glad that you had that. And I try to remember those are the things as flight crews that we're planting these images and those experiences in young minds very early. So we really need to really invest and really make sure that we're really putting off that good image, because people are really latching onto this field from very early and they're continuing on.
Could agree more. With that presentation, looking back, if they didn't come in and give such a great presentation, or even show up that day, it would probably been tough to even see myself in EMS, because a healthcare class kind of introduces you to the entire healthcare industry. So there's so many choices, and it's kind of hard to fall on specifically EMS unless you hear the cool stories and all that. It's a pretty good convincing factor to start off with.
Yeah, I actually had a very similar experience, and I was part of an explorer post at the local hospital, and so got the experience and the exposure with a lot of different avenues of medicine, and people come in and talk to us about it. But EMS actually wasn't one of those things, nor was flight medicine. It was more so focused on everything within the hospital. And they made mention of like, oh, well, there's also EMT classes. And that was kind of like the extent of it. And I was like, well, that sounds interesting. That might be something I would be interested in. Right. And I'm dating myself a little bit here, but going back to, I think that was probably 1998, 99, somewhere around there. There was a big push for EMTs. And so it was, I think, $25 for the course that I took. And that included the book. Uh, because they were so anxious to get more EMTs out into the industry. And I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I was like, oh, this will look great on a resume. Like, I had zero intention of staying in EMS, but I think just like everybody else, like, we've gotten bit by that EMS bug, and it's something that just kind of really sticks with you. And I know we've talked about it on other podcasts, but it's like, I still remember that very first ambulance transport when the tones dropped, how nervous I was, where we went, what we did, what the patient was. Like, I still remember all of those things because it was such a pivotal moment in my life. And I think, we didn't, back then especially, we didn't do enough of a push of what this industry is like. I knew about helicopters and that they were medical helicopters, and I was obsessed with helicopters since I was a little kid. But I never really saw what that transition was going to look like for me until I actually got into the healthcare world and realized that this could become a reality. And so I guess that's where I want to kind of direct it at you then, Mark, as far as like, what was it about it? So obviously you had the informational session, you learned about being an EMT, you went and got your EMT. How did that transform you or inspire you to continue within the industry, work through your paramedic, and then eventually work into the flight world?
Great question. Yes. As I started going through EMT medic school, I found out that it was presented with a lot of challenges. A lot of us go into the industry and you're not just immediately born knowing how to take vitals, even something simple like that, or communicate effectively to maybe another person. So as I started going on, even with the simplest
Facts.
of tasks, it's the challenges that actually intrigued me more than anything, because it was so tough on everyone and it was so new and something different that really, like I said, it really intrigued me, because everyone kind of challenged with it was facing difficulty. So that difficulty, it was like an equal playing field for everyone that was there in class. And I felt like through those challenges, I just love a good challenge. So,
Mark, are you the kind of guy that you see something that sounds extremely difficult? I love that, and I'm going to go for that. That's kind of a lot of what I'm hearing, and I admire that, and I think that takes a huge amount of guts and a lot of self determination to really go after that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would really define myself as someone that goes after all the challenges that I can. And that is kind of tough, especially in kind of the flight industry, as you guys very well know. It's kind of a tough industry that no one really knows about and no one really knows how to get into and doesn't know what classes to take. I liked it even more for that reason.
Yeah, and for anybody that may follow you on any of the socials there, Mark, I'm sure people are probably aware, but it sounds like you had a partner in crime going through a lot of this as well. So I'm sure it was certainly nice to have that extra support going through this crazy journey with you.
Yeah, yeah. So as you guys can see in a lot of the posts, I have a twin brother. So it makes it even more interesting of a topic because now we have not only the normal challenge that everyone faces, but we get to challenge each other. We get to really compete in that way. We've been going back and forth for a while. And then as one does one thing, we both kind of build up into flight. So it's been a lot of fun.
Please tell me you use that to each other's advantages at times. A little sick
Yeah,
day, the other one
absolutely.
shows up, no one knows the difference,
It worked in high school and it works in careers too.
Heck yeah, that's awesome. Be like, "Hey, is your brother's is it Mike?"
Yeah.
"Yeah. Hey, Mike, I gotta I need to be off today. Do you mind filling in for me?" And no one knows the difference. That's gotta be awesome.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, and obviously, I'm sure you guys don't do it, but we spend, and in this industry, we spend so much time with each other. I really find it hard to believe that people wouldn't be able to tell the difference between you and your brother and the personality, like the minute little things between you guys. But that would be hysterical if you guys tried to pull that off.
Yeah, you would actually be surprised and how many other people kind of experience it, the stories we've heard over the years. And it seems that it is, as long as you keep us separated, is the best bet because that's when people can't tell those minute differences. Whenever we're hanging out together, yeah, you can kind of pick it out. But whenever we're separate, we look the same, we act the same, and we have the same experiences in life. So it just looks like I'm doing 48-hour shifts all day, every day.
No, when you guys posted that video or the photo of you guys next to each other, same flight suit, if he wasn't wearing the hat, I wouldn't be able to tell the difference.
So, Mark, obviously, this has been a little bit of a journey for you to get to your career as a flight clinician. A lot of motivation along the way. Obviously, you had some people helping you and pushing you along the way as well. How would you say? So, you've been doing this a couple years now. You're kind of in that spot of your career where I think you're comfortable now, right? When you first start in flight medicine, you're terrified of so many things, and you're constantly wanting to improve and get better, and you don't feel comfortable in your own shoes. And it takes a good year and a half to you really feel like you find your groove and you're in the right spot. And you've gone through all of that stuff in your flight career now as you've progressed through EMT, paramedic, and now flight clinician. And it's like, I think we all get to that point at some point where you just get comfortable, right? Like everything just seems to flow. There's just a natural pattern that happens with everything that we do. And I think it's a normal transition for a lot of us to kind of fall into that comfort zone and forget to continue to push us forward and to learn new things and to challenge ourselves some more. And now that you are kind of at that point in your, career where you're comfortable in what you're doing, how do you find personally that you're able to maintain that motivation every day when you go to work to get the job done, to be that active team member, to engage and push each other forward as a team? Like, what's your secret?
Rotorwing pilots, your experience is in demand. Your skills are indispensable. Now take your career vertical with Global Medical Response. Find out about GMR's significant EMS pilot pay increases, sign-on bonuses, and stay incentive plans for select areas. Visit gmr.net/pilots to learn more and earn more today.
I would say motivation for people can be different on so many different ways. For me, I kind of have to think back to, like we spoke before, on what really captured me into get into this field. And remembering that presentation and that we're actually making difference in people's lives, as cliche as it may sound, we are there at their worst times, and we're there to make a difference, and we're there to comfort them and be an answer, especially whenever that worst time of their life is going on. I would say it starts with a mindset, and when you really think about it, and the way I think about it for myself is every patient deserves the best version of me every day that I go to work. And I shouldn't slack or shouldn't kind of wait for motivation. I should be there for my patients regardless, especially in this kind of career, as starting out as first responders all the way up to flight clinicians. We're there to help people. That motivation for me isn't something you wait for. And as we all know, we don't wake up motivated every day. Motivation kind of comes and goes. And if someone says you're motivated 24/7, that's just a lie. All right. But
Flat out lie.
Yeah.
most days, yeah, most days I hit the snooze button, I roll over and want to get more sleep like anyone else. But that's actually where you start recognizing complacency setting in. And that action, your action is what creates that motivation. I believe it's that kind of discipline that comes in that creates a motivation. And think of motivation as a decision like anything else. The biggest thing I would say is taking action first. Action creates that momentum. Momentum builds your confidence. Confidence builds your belief, and belief changes you as a person, and you become a changed person.
Man, I kind of feel a lot of this one, Mark. And
Yeah. I feel attacked right now.
I know. Like, when you almost feel like I totally feel the snooze button. And I have tried for probably the last like year and a half to set like really good habits, right? So I'm a morning person. Pretty much everyone else in my household is not, but I enjoy mornings. That's what I like. So I have tried to find, like you talked about, it's a mindset, right? And it's a choice. And I think that's so important that we have to remember that, like, we have a choice to continue to come to work and do this job. It's a very, very great privilege to do this job, but we have to make sure that we are making the best choices, because if we make the best choices for ourselves, like you said, Mark, then we are going to be our absolute best for our patients. And that's what it ultimately comes down to. If I were to choose to like do things to not get the good night's sleep, and then I'm snoozing in, and then I'm rolling into work on two wheels, and and then I'm running out and we're getting through the brief, and then we do the checklist, and I'm kind of like, what, I think everything's there, it's choices. And I feel like I've really tried like to find what works for me. I know a lot of people or a few people that are listening to this will be like, I'm not morning a person. I come alive at night. That's not me. So Mark, how do you, when you talk about making these choices and to set yourself up to be the best for your patients, so how can the things that you do for yourself, how does that transpire to motivating others to also do the same thing? Because just talking to you, I'm already checking boxes of things I need to change and help myself be better. So how do you get that to correlate to help motivate other people as well?
There's a couple different ways of doing it. I think it's like that mindset we've been talking about, and just your attitude and what you focus on. We see the world on how we choose to focus on it. If you're looking for positivity throughout the day, you're going to find a lot of positive stuff. If you want to look for something negative, there's plenty of negative out there, that's for sure. And it's easier to be negative than positive sometimes. I have to always kind of keep that positive mindset, but it's just like you said, coming prepared, staying humble whenever you get into the job. And you just have to keep going after it and keep going for those challenges. Me, myself, I'm not a morning person, but I enjoy the challenge of getting out of
Right
bed.
there with you.
I like that challenge, and I have to tell myself to go after it every morning. that's what I work towards. Just kind of keep up that consistency because people notice that consistency, especially in leadership. A lot of people think of it as like a rank, but it's more of influence, is what I see it as. And people follow that
Mm.
kind of positivity and that energy you bring to the field. So you're, at the end of the day, your attitude spreads faster than you think. And that culture can be kind of tough, especially, kind of reflecting back on it. You, you can't, you know, wait for the culture to be better. You have to create the culture and everyone kind of recognizes that energy you bring. So I try to bring my best self.
I absolutely love what you just said there. And there was a couple things I wanted to go back and kind of touch on because I think that, first off, your attitude is something that is so important. And I think it's so interesting and easy in this industry for us to constantly focus on the things that we can't control when we really should be focusing on the things that we can control. And I can control my attitude. I can control that I go out and I do a full rig trek. I can control that I
Mhm.
make sure I have all the things that I need, that I'm suited and booted and ready to go, that I have the right tools necessary with me, that I've practiced my craft enough times to make sure that I'm taking care of my patient the right way. Like these are all things I can control. And these are all things that when I do control them, will help to bring a better attitude, will help to, I think, at least hope to improve morale, that will make that team atmosphere a little bit better. And I love what you were saying there, in that, these are sometimes the simple or easy things that you can do as a person, as a provider, as a teammate, right? And I think that we forget about those sometimes. It's so easy to just kind of brush that under the rug, or there's the phrase of misery loves company, right? Like it's so much easier and more fun to be miserable sometimes because we need that validation or what have you. I'm not sure what the specifics are behind it, but it is very clearly, I think, a choice sometimes. And there are many days where, again, I am not a morning person. My coworkers know, do not talk to me until I've had a cup of coffee. It is not like, and especially if we're going on a flight at 3 o'clock in the morning where I'm tired and uncaffeinated and hungry, that combination in and of itself is not good for
Uh,
anyone, right? But I think that there's so much that we can do to control our own ability to be a positive team member. And I love how you were kind of explaining that, in that, these are the things that we have to choose to show up each day for our patients. We have to choose to show up for our partners every day. And quite frankly, we have to choose to show up for ourselves every day.
mm,
And I think that's probably the hardest part of all of this, because I think that we feel responsibility to someone else. We feel responsibility to our partners and to our patients and to our team, but we very rarely feel that same level of responsibility to ourselves. And I think that's where the challenge comes in. And so I love how you were, you put it very simply. This is a choice. This is something that we choose to do. And I think personally that the positivity that we can bring and the positive attitude that we can bring to a team atmosphere goes much further than the negative side of things. But I think that the negative side of things spreads like wildfire sometimes,
mm.
and it is extremely difficult to control. And so I think when we start getting down that negative route, that we start feeling a lot of that complacency of like, oh, it's okay. I was here yesterday. I don't need to check my gear again today. Right. Like, or, oh, I've done this skill 1,000 times. It's fine. I can just go through the motions and it'll be okay. And I think that we fall into that little bit of like, the complacency path. And I'm curious, obviously you're a very positive person, Mark. You like to motivate others. You see the best in the situation that's in front of you, and you try to bring that attitude, bring your own sunshine, right? Have you experienced a time where you have seen complacency in yourself or your team? And what did that look like for you, or how did you confront it or recognize it in the first place?
I think every provider experiences it. Complacency is kind of tough industry wide, but it's something that you don't really recognize at first. Like I said, I think everyone kind of experiences it. It's not a matter of if you're going to experience complacency, or rather when that complacency sets in.
Yeah.
You need to be prepared to overcome it. So just as we are in this industry of EMS, we're prepared for the worst thing to happen. We need to be prepared for complacency and our attitudes to change and for us to lose that passion. Nobody actually chooses that complacency. It happens one easy decision at a time. And those easy decisions can be something simple, skipping one training, you click through your online training quicker than normal, you quit reading, learning, or being a student, you stop asking questions, and you
Stop
become
giving it away.
comfortable.
We all watch all the videos. We watch all the videos.
Yeah,
No one skips forward through any of that. Come on.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
I would never.
The scary part of that complacency is it normally looks like confidence in most of us. It looks like you're confident, you're comfortable with anything and everything, but that's when you're complacent. And in a field, especially as medicine, that's ever changing, we have to kind of let those egos aside and bigger than be bigger than that and have curiosity. Like I said, complacency will set in. So you have to kind of confront it immediately. You have to start taking action. You got to stop being lazy. You got to do the trainings and, start taking on new and more challenges. So that's what I do.
Let me ask you this then. I want to dive that maybe one step further. And so when we were talking about, we have choices and we come in and we want to do the same thing, right? So Groundhog Day, right? when it's the same thing, 3 days in a row, or 3 shifts in a row, whatever it is, right? You do those same things. And then let's say over like a month time, from a leadership perspective, you come in, you do your job, you do your check off, you maybe do your straightforward flights or whatever, and you go home. Not a big deal. But then over a month's time, then like from when management or leadership, when people look back and say, these were all the things that we all saw, when you have your team based meetings or whatever, maybe these are the things that we didn't do so well at. Like, I've noticed this in the past. Like, do you think as a culture, and I'm talking about the HEMS industry and EMS and pre-hospital, like, do you think a lot of times we tend to focus more often on the things that we didn't maybe do so well, more than the things that we did right? And then I guess, does that kind of further promote that complacency, right? Because you're like, well, I did like 4 of these shifts and I didn't have anything go wrong. And then so if no one's noticing, then why am I going to continue to do the extra? I'm just going to check the box and go home. Do you think we kind of miss that mark a little bit? Instead of highlighting the highs and things we did good, do we focus more on some of the things we didn't?
We need to focus on all the positivity in everything that we do and the actual differences we make. It may have been just a simple checklist that we did, or it may have been just a simple call we ran. But truly, to that person that called 911, it was an emergency to them, and they didn't have an answer. And
Yeah.
obviously, they're looking at life in a more negative manner, especially if they're having an emergency. It's not a very positive atmosphere, right? So we have to kind of bring that positivity to
Right.
them, but also our best versions of ourselves. Helping that person, as simple as it may seem, makes a big difference in their lives, and they'll remember that for the rest of their lives.
I want to take it back one more step as well. I loved something that you said there, Mark, and that complacency is often disguised as confidence. I feel like that was something that was super important to kind of digest for a second. And I'm thinking back in my career, and I'm thinking about when I started to feel comfortable and confident in the job that I'm doing. And when I look at the people that I looked up to who are also comfortable and confident in the job that they're doing, or people who I considered to be like masters in their craft, nothing bothered them. They were always able to handle every situation. They knew what to do, whatever would come down the pike. And I think there's a very fine line, because I never really looked at the complacency and confidence correlation before. And now I'm going back and I'm kind of looking into, what that looks like in my career, and how there are certainly times where I've noticed in myself where I have gotten complacent with some of the things, and I've had to like have that like internal wake up call of like, knock it off. Like, this is not okay. And I never thought of it before, put that correlation there. But hearing you say that really makes me kind of look back on the times where I have caught myself being complacent in something. And I can honestly say that I certainly feel like those times are often some of those times where I felt the most confident. And I really think that that's an interesting distinction that you brought up there,
Mhm.
in that it's easy to fall into that path. And I don't think we ever really recognize that in ourselves, because that in and of itself, I think, is a natural progression in our careers, is to feel confident in the job that we're doing. But at what point does that confidence turn into the complacency? And that's got to be a really fine line. Like, is there a way that you've found in your career, or that you see in others, that really help to distinguish between those two? And how do you maintain confidence, competence, and the ability to do the job well without getting complacent?
Thank you to our sponsor, Spectrum Aeromed. Every mission starts with the right equipment. Spectrum Aeromed designs advanced, customizable medical interiors for rotor and fixed-wing aircraft, helping crews care for patients safely and efficiently in the air. Discover more at spectrum-aeromed.com.
Whenever we think of complacency itself impacts every aspect of the team. That's from the medicine, the communication amongst crew members, the morale or that culture we talked about at the base. It affects your training, your attitude, and can even roll over to like safety, but ultimately the teamwork that you provide. Complacency, remember, doesn't usually create like one catastrophic mistake, right? It's not something big, it's the small things. And that's what I really kind of focus on. Complacency really kind of creates hundreds of small shortcuts. That's what kind of makes up complacency. And
Yeah.
eventually those shortcuts and those shortcomings catch up to you. As that adds up over time, it can catch up to anyone.
Yeah, I feel like I as you're saying it, I'm thinking back to times too when I'm just not at my best, right? And I feel those, and I'm actually being complacent, and I hope that I'm not trying to hide it under like this confidence, or more false confidence, in that aspect. But I do find, you know, it, I do find, just looking back and thinking about things on when we're a busy industry, and not only is like the Hems world a busy industry, like there's so much that goes into each patient flight and encounter, right? And it affects so many different aspects of each provider, and then it affects us all differently. And then we put 3 or 4 people of that team in the aircraft trying to mesh and accomplish the same goal. And if we all have those little slips where we're not kind of at our best, and like you said, Mark, they're like the small shortcuts, the small little things to just like, we don't really need to do that on this flight. This one's fine. And then we get back and it's like, you know what, I'll restock in just a little bit. It's hot out, so I need to go eat, and then I need to go rest, or whatever. And so I think of those times that I easily do myself. And then, like you said, it'll catch up to us, right? Because if I didn't put everything back on the aircraft, and the next flight comes in, and then you're scrambling because you got to grab everything, get out to the aircraft, or you're trying to restock it real quick. And then that's when things get missed. And I think that's such a valid point. I'm literally speaking from experience. So. but I think that's just such a valid point, that it's so important for us to like stay the course, right? Like it's hard because it takes so much for each flight, and it's just hard to describe, I guess, for people like if you haven't done it, and if and for anybody listening that's in this field, I think everybody can relate to that. It's the long game on how to stay confident without being complacent and doing those things. So I guess my question, because I'm literally thinking of all the things that I should be fully doing 100%, not even, 98%. I should be seeing it through each and every time, so how can we combat that? So like, what are the things that like for me, example, what can I do on my next shift to really make sure that I'm seeing things through and making sure I'm not being complacent? And how can I do that and bring it to the team and base level?
I think the biggest difference you can make is kind of reflecting back to when you first started the career, and we can all relate how scared we were, both in getting on a truck for the first time or maybe the helicopter for the first time and just not knowing. But this industry is so big, so we should feel almost that way every time we come into work because there is so much to learn and do. As you're kind of going throughout the career, I find that you should just stay a student forever. Because if you stay and you become the instructor, I always said to to teach is to learn twice, right? We need to be on top of our games and learning more because there is so much more to learn. For every shift that I walk
Mm.
into, I start asking myself, especially whenever I start in to become more complacent, I ask myself, what can I learn today? What can I improve? And what happened today that can make a difference in the future, if that's for my patients or for myself. I always kind of keep searching for mentors, never stop reading, always teach others. And like I said before, that teaching forces you to keep learning and doing more. That that growth is what you should be focusing on.
I really like that aspect of it, and I think that you're certainly onto something in the regards of the education side of things. I think I've had some of the best shifts when I've come in and people have been engaged and wanting to go through training scenarios or some kind of education and not doing it by themselves, but doing it together so that we can
Mhm.
talk through these things. I mean, look, we gotta train how we fight, right? And I think that it's so easy to find yourself going down this rabbit hole of being complacent and just going through the motions rather than actually doing the full on training the way that it's supposed to do, the way that you would communicate, the way that the you would build the muscle memory of going through some of those things. And I think that that can easily be translated into other aspects of the team dynamics. And I think, a lot of what we've talked about has been some of those internal noticing of complacency and how that affects us and really kills the overall our own internal motivation. But I think when we talk about it from a team perspective, that this is a much broader and more dynamic topic, right? And this spreads out into your overall team dynamics, how you train, what your operations look like, and I think the overall attitude and morale of that specific team. And I think that I think the training and the education that you mentioned is certainly one way that we as individuals who are truly passionate about this job can hopefully have a positive influence on our team dynamics with. I can think of many circumstances throughout my career where either myself or someone else has come in and really been like gun ho about like, hey, let's do this education today. I really want to go through this and talk about it. And when you go through that with them, they're not just doing the motions. Think about the last time you had to drop your 3 tubes for the month to make sure that you're staying compliant for your team, right? Like, are you just dropping plastic or are you actually running through your RSI protocol and talking about what you would be doing to set yourself up for success and how you're going to position the patient and the equipment you're going to have and where you're going to have the equipment, what medications you're going to give, what the dosages are for that particular patient? And I feel like even the people who are in that situation doing it with you that you clearly don't want to be doing that with you, by the time you're done running through that training iteration, a lot of times those people are very engaged in the conversation and really having the necessary conversations and going through the necessary skills to make sure that they're setting the whole team up for success. And I really think that that's one super good way that you mentioned that can help combat some of that complacency. And it may start off rough, right? But like by the end of it, like if you can have that positive impact on your team, I mean that's helping your overall dynamics, that's helping the morale, that's helping the way that you work together, and that's ultimately helping our patients. And I think that we forget about sometimes the impact that we can have just by doing those little things. And that's why I love that you ended up bringing that particular topic up on it.
Yeah, absolutely. As you kind of had said, complacency is the biggest part there, and becoming comfortable. It's just staying a student and just staying at it, keep learning.
You said teaching is learning it twice. And I really like that because I do a lot of teaching. And I also think I probably learned things like probably 5 or 6 times by the time I end up teaching it correctly. So
Like you usually need to learn things the hard way. Which
that's usually how that's usually how it goes. But I really like that you said that teaching, is learning it twice. And I'm willing to bet after this show gets on the air, Mike's going to get emails being like, man, my education department heard this, and now we're all running through scenarios every day. Like, all 3 of us, we're going to get emails on this and be like, no.
but no, it's what you got to do. Like
you have to.
someone's life depends on this.
Absolutely.
Our team dynamics and morale depend on this.
It really does. How many of us have always said this, right? They're like, when you've worked on the rig or in the hospital, we've all said this. I will work the worst station you have. I will work the worst area. I will run all night as long as I have a great partner. I can do anything, right? And I feel like that is so true. And I feel like, Mark, if we were all to work together, I just feel like the way that you present yourself, bringing that positivity, I feel like it would be a great shift. We'd probably do a lot of training, and but I really think that's such
and probably some non-training team
right,
building.
Yeah. But it's such it's a very important aspect. I think that we really have to remember that we, like, us as individuals, it's easy for us to complain about all the things that, like, we can't change. And when we talked about that earlier, it just hit me as like, well, why the hell do we focus on that? Why do we sit here and bitch about, like, oh, this schedule sucks, or, oh, I don't really like going over here. It's like, yeah, well, I chose this, so I might as well just be happy doing it, and I just wonder, how we can all get better. uh, and I think, Mark, you brought up that first step is just making that conscious choice to just be positive, about it. And I think, like you said, that spreads over into the rest of the team. I'm guilty as charged. Definitely. Sometimes I'm not my best at that.
Yeah, I think a big part of that is with Mike, what you had said earlier about innovation and just going through the scenarios and training. A lot of times we just go through it quickly, and yeah, we check the boxes. Yeah, we innovate the plastic head, and it's just part of the job. But a lot of us, especially innovating and stuff, is not a skill you're just born with. It's something you have to practice over and over with. And even when you have that skill kind of established, you're still creating that muscle memory. So I think going back, doing the scenarios and acting like it's a real patient, and kind of establishing that baseline. Whenever we get that call at 2 a.m., we're able to perform like any other because that's just part of our memory now.
Yeah, it's never at like 10 a.m. that call happens when you're like, you came in, you did your check, you had your breakfast, you did everything. It's never when you're like, you think you're prepared. It's always 2 a.m. when that call comes in for that.
Oh, of course. That's always the way it goes. And I think, obviously you have some really good points there, Mark, on how that looks from a team perspective. But I feel like there's more to turning complacency into motivation than just doing education or training with your team, right? Like it's how you interact with them. It's maybe you bring in some food and cook that day as a crew. Maybe it's, that you guys have planned to do something after work, right? Like you build that team atmosphere, and like, are there any other tricks that you have up your sleeve when you go in and say your partner's like just not feeling it today? Your partner is totally lacking motivation, doesn't want to really get up and do a whole lot, is really resistant to anything that's going on. Like, how do you help to motivate them in a positive way? Because it's more than just doing the training. Like there's a lot of other aspects that go into it. Like, what tricks do you have that maybe I can try next time I go in and my partner's not feeling, or let's be real, next time I'm not feeling it, my partner needs to deal with me. Like, what are some things that maybe would help to push things in the positive direction when you maybe have that difficult team member who is really not, or is on the struggle bus with motivation that day?
The biggest thing I would say is you spoke on complacency and motivation and how to change that. So something to keep in mind is you can still love your career and have become too comfortable now. So that's something to consider. You have to start incorporating discipline kind of in your daily routine. And honestly, that discipline matters more than the motivation you may feel to get out of bed and stop hitting the snooze button, right? So you got to create that routine and discipline to just get up even when you don't feel like it. And, as that motivation comes and goes, you have to create a standard for yourself. Standards, they determine who you become. I think a lot of people kind of look for that motivation, and that can be motivated at times, especially some videos you may see here or there. But you need to chase fulfillment in everything you do. And honestly, a good public speaker that talks on this specific point is Tony Robbins. If you guys have listened to him, he does a
Mhm.
full podcast on the art of fulfillment. I think I really focus on that, is feeling fulfilled in what you're doing. And he speaks highly on it. And the biggest takeaway is that fulfillment comes from serving something bigger than yourself and what you do every day. So that could be serving your patients, serving your students, maybe your family when you come home, the community that we serve at work, or, our partners. You got to have that purpose.
So it's not about starting a TikTok, right? I mean, I guess it could be, right? Like, if that's something you and your teammates want to
Yeah.
do together, but I can think of most of my teammates who would probably punch me in the face if I said, let's go do this.
But I mean, whatever works, like you said.
Yeah.
But Mark, you said the discipline word, and like instantly I cringe because there's like, man, should I just order pizza and just be lazy today? And like my right brain says, yes, you should 100% do that. Then the left brain's like, that sounds good, but no, like, man, gosh, I maybe I'm just speaking from like terrible personal experience of just like this lack of discipline, I guess, at times when it comes to, I don't know, eating pizza and being lazy.
Thank you to our sponsor, Metro Aviation. Metro Aviation, the world's largest family-owned aeromedical operator, offers comprehensive aircraft services with 140 plus aircraft in over 25 states. The Completion Center installs medical and law enforcement kits and avionics, serving diverse aviation needs including offshore, utility, VIP, and corporate sectors.
And I do really like that aspect of it, Mark, and in that you got to find your why, right? And I think that like this is something that we preach in like a lot of different areas. And I know when we have our academies for flight crew assistance and support team for people who want to come and join the peer support, like that's like lecture number one, is that you need to find your why. Like, why are you here doing this? And is this for your benefit? Is this for the benefit of others? And what is the reasoning behind that motivation for you to be here? And I think that it's so often easy for us to forget that and to fall down this other path that we just don't want to go, whether that be individually, as a team, or quite frankly, as an industry. And I think I've seen so many changes in the industry over the years. And, that's why I end up following so many of people like yourself, Mark, who are motivated, who do see the validity of the job, the passion of the job, who are really truly interested in continuing to motivate others, because I think that we need more of that. I feel like in our world, we see death and destruction on a daily basis. It's all of the bad things that are happening in life. It's all of the negative sides of things, and we forget sometimes to focus on the positive. So when I see people like yourself and many of the others that are out there on social media that are trying to make that positive influence, to me, that's something that I really appreciate and enjoy watching. Whether that be an educational experience or just something lighthearted and humorous and something to brighten the day. I think that those are things that we all need to start getting behind and doing a little bit more, or being more engaged in, because like I said before, and like I've said many other times, this is the best job in the world. There are some days I don't want to come to work, but this is still the best job in the world. And I think that it's so easy to forget that from a team perspective sometimes. And if we bring that negative attitude to work, we may be having a bad day, but that has even bigger impact on the team that we're affecting and the patients that we're caring for. And I think that's what I struggle with sometimes is I try to show up with a positive attitude all the time. As long as I'm fed and caffeinated and get a little bit of rest, I can usually do that okay. However, there are some days where it's easier said than done.
As long as it's these very specific requirements, I'm 100% positive.
Yeah, exactly. But like I appreciate that, people like you, Mark, are willing to come on here and have this conversation and really identify that like this is something that affects each and every one of us. We all go through this in our career to some extent in some way, or we are affected by it in one way or another. And so I love that you're willing to come on and have those conversations, because I think that this is something that is so important that it's easy to get caught in that bubble. It's easy to forget about the big picture, to remember the why, to put yourself back in those shoes of you being, a baby EMT who is just enamored by everything that's going on in the EMS industry. And I think it's healthy for all of us to kind of take that step back and maybe sometimes be forced to remember what is so freaking amazing about everything that we get to do every single day we get to go to work.
Yeah, I think the biggest point you had even spoke on is that why. And a lot of people have trouble finding their purpose kind of even in this industry like many. It's actually a recent question that I've been getting actually pretty frequently is like how to find that purpose, especially in this kind of career, is creating that purpose. I think that's actually the wrong question we're looking at it. Purpose isn't necessarily something you discover. So it's something you choose every day and you find that purpose and meaning in maybe the career you're doing, but in life. That purpose, especially for us, may be helping a patient or teaching a student, like you said earlier, Blake. And the next time we're coming home to family, we may be serving them and find purpose in that. So you gotta find meaning and purpose in what you're doing today, because purpose follows meaning. It may be just serving the person right in front of you. That's not to say not to celebrate the wins. Absolutely celebrate the wins and those small things that build up. That's kind of creates that motivation, that discipline. But it's so much more than just the wins necessarily to kind of keep in mind, because it's not the achievements that you gain, it's a person you become. So that's what I really harp on.
Yeah, that's really good. You know, I think I can think of many people that I've looked up to over the years that when they've retired and moved on, I don't remember all the certs they had or all the other accolades that they had, but I do remember how they were as a person, how they treated patients, and then how they treated the team, and how they were with everybody. And I think that's a really, really good point to bring up, that's that thing that sticks with people, that how you're remembered and how you help other people feel about themselves and the patient. That's a really huge point.
Yeah, I love that you kind of harped on that point too. The biggest thing I want to everyone kind of listening to remember is to find that purpose and all that. You don't need a new year. You don't need a new job. You don't need the perfect circumstances where we we have to have our coffee.
Come on,
Sorry,
that was my
Mike.
excuse.
Oh man, I'll start tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'll start tomorrow.
I know. But essentially, what you need is a decision, right? Growth is a decision. And that fulfillment we talked about earlier is a decision. Being excellent is a decision. Every morning, you have to kind of wake up and be that better version of yourselves. Kind of a couple questions I go back on is to kind of create that purpose and meaning. I ask myself, like, who can I serve today? What can I learn today? And how do you become better than you were yesterday?
Love that.
Damn.
And I think you hit the nail on the head with the purpose side of things and the choice to be excellent, the choice to be motivated, the choice to make the right decision. And I think taking it back to the beginning of the entire podcast today of talking about that, you need to have that work life balance. I feel like part of having purpose is being something other than a flight clinician, right? Like you need to have that. Well, I'm also an avid hiker and I love to go boating or I enjoy riding my motorcycle or whatever it is for you, reading books, being with the kids. Like you need to have that purpose, not just at work, but outside of work to have that healthy work life balance to bring more meaning to the things that you're doing on a daily basis so that you can hopefully be more deliberate about the decisions that you're making. At least that's how I equate it, listening to a lot of the things that you're talking about, Mark, and the conversations we've been having over the past hour. I feel like there are so many things that are such a motivating factor that are constantly beat down by all the demotivating factors that surround us on a daily basis. And without having that purpose and that true sense of why behind it, both inside and outside of the jobs that we do, I feel like we're probably missing a piece of the puzzle if we don't have both of those aspects. And so it's not just about showing up at work and making the right decision. It's about deciding to, maybe not skip that workout or to spend that extra time with the family or to do that thing that you've been thinking about doing that you just haven't done in a while. I'll be the first to say I'll love an excuse to not have to go back to the gym until New Year's. And I know I need to get my butt back there. But it's so easy to make an excuse and to not do those things because it's easy to lose that purpose. And you have to wake up every day and choose that purpose and choose to be excellent and choose to be motivated. And it's not easy. It is not easy because if it was, everybody would be doing it, right? So I love how you kind of phrase things in that, like, this really is your choice and you can choose to be in a good spot with your team, or you can choose to bring those team dynamics down. But all of these things are things that you have control over around you. And so I appreciate being able to have that conversation because I think that these are concepts that like we don't think about, we don't delve into it enough. We just kind of go with the flow and whatever mood is around us, we mimic that or we go along with it. And we don't realize that we can truly be the catalyst for a change just by doing some very simple things or making some very simple decisions. So I really appreciate that you've come on and joined us today to have that discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Well, I learned a lot. I learned a lot of like that self-reflection and really looking back and just remembering how young and motivated and the hair that I had way back when I first started.
Your flowing locks.
Oh yeah, no, that actually never happened.
Say if it did, I need pictures now.
Yeah. Yeah. When I was like 5, probably that's probably when my hair was its longest. But no, Mark, I really appreciate, man. In a world of like social media is just, it's every day. It's everything. It's every aspect of everything that everybody does pretty much nowadays. And I think it's great. And I'm really happy that Mark, that you're out there putting out the positive vibes and really throwing out there that you are capable of so much more. And I think sometimes people just don't hear it enough. and even in the small things. And I think that's where people will find that confidence in themselves. And you don't have to become complacent. Like, we're all going to make mistakes. And like you said, that complacency part will always be there and roll in. But I think that if we can just be better and kinder to each other day in and day out, it starts with us. And then that just flows into everything else that you do, being a better husband, brother, family, clinician. It rolls into so many other aspects. I think if we can really keep that, like you said, Mark, you know, teaching is learning twice, staying humble, staying motivated, and being better than yesterday, and asking yourself those questions on who you can serve better today. I think that's great, man. And I really appreciate you coming on and talking about that. I definitely had a lot of self-reflection. I didn't plan on this being a therapy session, but I appreciate it. This was a really great conversation to have. So thank you.
Yeah, I hope I motivated you guys. I think onto your point earlier, Blake, was at the end of your career, people won't remember you for your flights, for your innovation skills. It's really how you made them feel,
Yeah.
both as a patient, maybe as a team member, as a community member walking through the store and just doing your daily life, right? How they feel is their kind of perspective on life and how you can really change it. You have to
Yeah.
kind of create that atmosphere and lead by example. And that's what people will remember you for. And the biggest topic, especially Mike, you kind of mentioned it earlier, was that progress that we should always be seeking. And progress isn't just like part of happiness. I define progress as happiness. We have to kind of make progress in anything and everything that we do in life. If that's going home and serving our family, or maybe riding dirt bikes on the weekend, or working in the careers that we do, you have to make progress and you have to kind of keep looking at the positive side of things.
Yeah, I love that. And I think we need to challenge ourselves every day to look for that progress, and to also challenge others to find that in themselves. And I think that focusing on these little things, every team, every crew, the entire industry for that matter, is going through a lot of changes, has some ups and downs, there's peaks and valleys, and there are a lot of things that we are going through as an industry, both and locally and globally. And I think just focusing on some of the little things that you've talked about, Mark, and bringing that to light and challenging each other to do the right thing in the right way with the right attitude, I think is really the key to us as an industry being healthier, being stronger, and being happier at the end of the day. And so I really appreciate you coming on and joining us. And obviously, if our listeners out there, if you have not already followed Mark, please go and do so. It is great, lighthearted videos to be able to see on a daily basis that really are something that can bring a smile to your face in the craziness of everything else that's going on. So keep doing what you're doing, Mark. Really appreciate you joining us. And this has been a fantastic conversation.
Thank you guys so much. You guys are awesome.
And if you guys are all caught up on the Valor Flight Crew podcast, make sure you head on over to verticalhelicast.com, where you can check out the Hangar Z podcast, Helicopter podcast, Vertical MRO podcast. Special thank you to all of our listeners out there for your continued support of the Vertical Helicast platform and the Valor Flight Crew podcast. Be safe, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Valor Flight Crew podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe to hear more stories that promote the personnel and equipment behind the missions in public safety aviation. Lastly, stand by for a message from our sponsors.
Thank you to our sponsor, Spectrum Aeromed. Every mission starts with the right equipment. Spectrum Aeromed designs advanced, customizable medical interiors for rotor and fixed-wing aircraft, helping crews care for patients safely and efficiently in the air. Discover more at spectrum-aeromed.com. Thank you to our sponsor, Metro Aviation. Metro Aviation, the world's largest family-owned aeromedical operator, offers comprehensive aircraft services with 140-plus aircraft in over 25 states. The Completion Center installs medical and law enforcement kits and avionics, serving diverse aviation needs including offshore, utility, VIP, and corporate sectors. Rotor wing pilots, your experience is in demand. Your skills are indispensable. Now take your career vertical with global medical response. Find out about GMR's significant EMS pilot pay increases, sign-on bonuses, and stay incentive plans for select areas. Visit gmr.net/pilots to learn more and earn more today.